She froze the moment I said it. The wineglass slipped from her hand, shattering across the kitchen tiles, red spilling like a wound. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just said one sentence, quietly, almost absently. You know, Lena, every night since the accident, I see your face right before the car hits me. Her breath hitched. Her pupils widened, pulse trembling in her throat. It was like I'd just spoken a truth she'd buried with my memories. The silence between us felt alive, like the room itself was listening. She stammered something about déjà vu, about trauma and confusion, but I could hear the panic under her calm. That was the moment I knew she'd been lying. Not just about who she was, but about what she did to me. And that night, I stopped being her victim. The first thing I remember is the smell of antiseptic. Cold air. A steady beeping somewhere near my ear. Then, her voice. Soft. Familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Hey, she whispered. You're safe now. When my eyes focused, she was there, sitting beside the bed, her hand resting lightly on mine like it had always belonged there. She smiled, but I saw the exhaustion behind it. Puffy eyes. Pale skin. I tried to speak, but my throat felt raw. Who are you? The question hit her harder than I expected. Her fingers stiffened, then she laughed awkwardly, brushing hair from her face. It's okay, you've been through a lot. I'm Lena. I'm your close friend. Something about how she said friend lingered. Like she was swallowing another word before it escaped. The doctor came in soon after. Older man, calm voice, clipboard in hand. He explained the situation in clinical fragments I could barely follow: severe head trauma, short-term amnesia, temporary confusion. Your memory loss might be partial, he said. You'll recall pieces over time. People, places, it's like reconnecting wires. Don't force it. Lena nodded faster than I did. Of course. I'll make sure he takes it slow. Her tone was protective. Possessive, almost. Over the next few days, she never left my side. She brought home-cooked meals that smelled too good to be for a hospital room. She talked to the nurses like they were intruding. She adjusted my pillow, tucked me in, laughed at jokes I didn't remember telling. When she smiled, my chest hurt, not with pain, but something deeper, older. Like an echo of a memory I couldn't reach. Sometimes, I'd close my eyes and almost see her in other places, by a lake, under yellow light, wearing a different expression. But the image slipped away before I could hold it. One night, as I pretended to sleep, she hummed a tune softly to herself. I didn't know the song, but my body reacted before my mind did. My fingers tapped the rhythm against the blanket. She noticed and stopped mid-note, her breath catching like she'd been caught trespassing. You used to love that song, she said, voice trembling. You'd play it every morning. Her eyes glistened, and for a second, she looked like someone grieving, not for me, but for something she'd done to me. The nurses liked her, at first. But I noticed things they thought I didn't. The way they avoided eye contact when she spoke. The whispers near the doorway when she went to grab coffee. One afternoon, I overheard two of them talking outside my room. He doesn't remember her, one said. The other shook her head. No. Poor guy. Before I could process what that meant, Lena walked back in with a smile so forced it felt like plastic. What were they talking about? I asked. She shrugged. Probably my terrible coffee order. Don't worry about it. And then, she reached out and brushed her thumb across my forehead. The gesture silenced the question before it could grow. On my 5th day, the doctor said I was recovering faster than expected. If things continue like this, we can discharge you soon, he said. Lena's hand tightened around mine when he said it. That's great, she said slowly, as if the words hurt her. Later, when her phone rang, I noticed she turned away to answer it, whispering quickly before hanging up. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work," she replied. No hesitation. Too fast. The phone buzzed again 10 minutes later, screen lighting up just long enough for me to see the name, Mark. When I looked up, she'd already slipped it back into her bag. The first time I stood on my own, she clapped her hands like I'd done something miraculous. "Look at you," she said. "You'll be running marathons in no time." Her laughter was bright, sincere, or maybe I wanted it to be. I found myself smiling with her, feeling warmth I couldn't explain. Every time she left the room, I felt empty. Every time she came back, I felt whole again. It scared me how much I relied on her. When I thanked her one night for staying, she looked at me for a long time before answering. "You don't need to thank me," she said softly. "I should be the one apologizing." "For what?" Her eyes flickered away. "For not being there when you needed me most." There was weight behind those words, a shadow I couldn't see. She reached out, took my hand, and held it just a little too long. And even though I didn't remember loving her, I knew I once had. Or maybe I still did. When I finally left the hospital, she was the one who signed the papers. The nurse handed her my discharge file like she'd earned the right to own it. "Let's get you home," she said, looping her arm through mine. Her perfume was the same as the dream I'd had the night before, sweet, familiar, haunting. I didn't know who I was before the crash. But as she guided me out into the cold sunlight, I felt certain of one thing. Whoever I used to be, I trusted her. And that was my first mistake. The day I left the hospital felt like freedom, until I realized freedom came with no direction. The air outside hit my face like a stranger's touch. Cold, distant. I watched cars move through the parking lot and wondered which one of them I used to drive. Lena stayed close, her hand hovering behind my back, not quite touching but never leaving. "Careful on the steps," she murmured. She'd already arranged everything. My clothes. The apartment key. Even a doctor's follow-up scheduled for me. It was comforting and suffocating at the same time. Her car smelled faintly of citrus and something floral, familiar. I rolled the window down to steady my nerves, and she laughed gently. "You always do that. Can't stand air fresheners." Her voice was fond, practiced. I wanted to believe her. Her apartment, no, my apartment, she reminded me, felt like stepping into a life someone else had been living. Everything was neat. Too neat. Walls bare except for a clock ticking too loud. "Where are the photos?" I asked. She froze for a fraction of a second before smiling. "You deleted them before the accident. Said you wanted a fresh start." "Oh." I nodded, though something inside me tightened. That sounds like me, I guess. But it didn't. Not at all. She handed me a glass of water, guiding me to the couch like a nurse. I sat, scanning the space. The air felt heavy, like the walls were keeping secrets. Lena walked to the kitchen and opened her phone. When she saw me looking, she turned her back. Days passed like scenes on repeat. Morning coffee. She cooks breakfast. Gentle smiles. Forced laughter. Sometimes, I'd catch her staring at me, not with affection, but calculation. Measuring what I remembered, maybe. When friends started visiting, the pattern cracked. The first was Evan. Tall, wiry, with restless eyes. He hugged me awkwardly, his gaze flicking toward Lena. "Good to see you, man," he said. "You're looking alive." Lena laughed too loud. "He's improving every day. I'm helping him get back on track." Evan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I bet you are." When Lena left the room to grab drinks, he leaned closer. His voice dropped. "Hey, do you remember anything about before?" I shook my head. Not much. Just flashes. He hesitated. You and Lena, never mind. Forget it. What? I pressed. He sighed. Just be careful, okay? Before I could ask, she returned, balancing glasses of lemonade like a perfect host. Evan's expression sealed shut. A few days later, I caught something I wasn't supposed to. Lena was in the hallway, speaking on the phone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, it just happened. He doesn't remember, she whispered, voice tight. No, I'm serious. Not a clue. He trusts me completely. Just, be patient. A pause. A nervous laugh. Then the words that made my stomach twist. Yes. I'll tell you when it's done. When she hung up, I slipped back into the living room, pretending to scroll through my notebook. My hand trembled as I wrote down what I'd heard. That notebook became my lifeline. I started writing everything. Smells. Words. Dreams. Little details that came and went like static memories. Burnt toast equals childhood. Name, Mark, means something. Lena crying guilt. Some nights, I woke up with images flashing through my mind, an argument on a rainy street, someone shouting, "Don't touch me." And always, the same face in the dream, Lena's. But somehow not her. Younger. Harsher. I told her about the dreams once. She brushed my hair back, smiling. You always had wild dreams. You'd wake me up at 3 a.m. ranting about things that never happened. Something about the way she said it caught me off guard. You? I asked. I used to wake you up. She blinked. Oh, well, not me exactly. I mean, back when we were roommates. Remember? No, I said quietly. I don't. She kissed my forehead like she was soothing a child. Then don't worry about it. Over time, I noticed her control tightening. She cooked every meal. Paid every bill. Answered my phone when I wasn't fast enough. I told myself she was just helping, but her help left no space for me to think. Once, I went for a walk alone. When I got back, she was pacing by the door. Where were you? I just needed air. You should have told me. Her tone cracked, then softened. Sorry. I just worry you'll get lost again. Her apology sounded rehearsed. Small inconsistencies began piling up like dust I couldn't ignore. She knew the exact place my spare keys were hidden. She remembered passwords to my streaming accounts. She even knew which drawer I kept painkillers in. When I asked how she knew all that, she smiled and said, "You told me once. You forget how much you talk around me." I nodded. But my gut said otherwise. 2 weeks after coming home, another friend dropped by, Julia. Her energy was different. Cautious. Sympathetic. "Oh my God," she said when she saw me. "You really don't remember?" I forced a smile. Bits and pieces. Mostly gone. Her eyes darted to Lena. "And she's been taking care of you?" "Yeah," I said. "She's been amazing." Julia's lips tightened. "I'm sure." Lena laughed lightly. "He's lucky to have me, right?" Something about that laugh chilled me. Julia stayed only 20 minutes. As she left, she hugged me tight and whispered near my ear. "Trust your instincts. They're stronger than your memories." When the door closed, I turned to ask Lena what she thought she meant. But Lena was already at the sink, scrubbing an already clean plate with too much force. She always had a flair for the dramatic, she muttered. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed Julia's words, Evan's expression, Lena's whispered call. I got up quietly, pacing the apartment. My eyes caught the faint glint of metal near the door. A spare key. Not mine. Hers. I picked it up. The metal was warm, like it had just been used. Why did she need her own key to my place? I wrote it down in my notebook, the ink trembling as I pressed harder. Lena's key equals. Ask later. But I never did. Not yet. The dreams worsened. Always the same fight. Rain pouring, headlights cutting through the dark. Lena was shouting something I couldn't understand. And me saying, "You lied to me." I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping. The clock read 3:12 a.m. Lena stirred beside me. She wasn't supposed to be there, she'd fallen asleep on the couch, or so I thought. Her voice was low. Another dream? I nodded. She reached over, pressing her palm to my chest. Shoo. You're safe now. The pressure of her hand was grounding but suffocating. I wanted to believe her. But somewhere deep inside, something screamed that I shouldn't. The next day, I went through the closet. Searching for anything, old clothes, photos, a clue. Most drawers were empty or freshly folded. Too organized. Then, at the back of the top shelf, I found an empty photo frame face down. Dust had collected around it, but not on it. Someone had removed the picture recently. When Lena came home, I asked, "Did we have a photo here before?" She didn't even look up from unpacking groceries. Probably. You hated how you looked in most of them. Who took it down? You did. You said you didn't like reminders of the past. Her answers came too fast, too clean. The more I observed her, the clearer it became, she was performing. Every smile, every touch had a rhythm, a structure. Like she was waiting for me to respond a certain way. And when I didn't, I saw cracks appear. She'd bite her lip. Tap her fingers. Watch me like I was slipping away. One evening, she caught me writing in my notebook. What's that? Just notes. The doctor said it might help. She leaned closer. Can I see? I hesitated. It's just personal stuff. Her eyes darkened for half a second before she laughed. Fair enough. Just don't let it make you overthink, okay? Overthink. That word echoed all night. The next morning, I woke to the sound of her phone buzzing again. The name Mark lit up the screen. When I looked up, she was already watching me. Work call, she said automatically. I didn't say anything. She smiled, but her hand shook slightly as she silenced the phone. By then, I'd stopped pretending the unease was just paranoia. Something was off. Deeply off. I didn't know what she wanted from me, affection. Forgiveness. Control, but I knew she wasn't telling me the whole truth. And yet, every time she looked at me, part of me softened. Because the strangest part wasn't her lies. It was how much I needed them. They were the only thing anchoring me to a life that no longer existed. That dependency scared me more than anything else. So I kept quiet. Observed. Wrote. Waited. Somewhere inside, I felt it, the truth, scratching at the edges of my memory, begging to be remembered. And Lena, she was terrified of the day I would. It started with a sound. A faint clink of metal hitting the floor. I had been cleaning the cabinet under the desk when something rolled out, a small silver flash drive, scratched along the sides, faintly labeled in black ink, Our Truth. The handwriting was unmistakably Lena's. The word felt too heavy. I stared at it for a long time, thumb tracing the faded label. My heart thudded once, then again, harder. I didn't remember ever owning a flash drive. I didn't remember anything. But something deep in my gut told me this was exactly what she didn't want me to find. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. She slept like someone unafraid, back flat, mouth slightly open, one arm draped carelessly over my side. trusting. Or maybe certain I was too broken to question her. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen blinked, hesitated, then opened a folder titled Memories. Dozens of files. Photos. Videos. My hand trembled as I clicked the first one. It was us. Lena and me, on a beach, sunlight spilling over the water. She was laughing, holding the camera toward us. I had my arm around her waist, sand on my shirt. The date stamp read August 17, 2022, 9 months before the accident. Video after video played, and each one filled me with a strange vertigo. I saw myself smiling, touching her, loving her. A version of me that felt like a stranger but looked painfully familiar. Our faces close at a candlelit dinner. Her head resting on my chest. Our voices whispered stupid inside jokes. I paused one clip and stared at her eyes, the same eyes that now watched me every morning, waiting for signs of remembrance. I whispered to the empty room, we were never just friends. My stomach turned as the truth sank in. She hadn't been a caretaker or a friend helping me recover. She'd been my girlfriend. My lover. The person who had lied to my face every single day since I woke up. But why? I kept scrolling, desperate, until I found the last video. The one that explained everything. The screen flickered to life. It was nighttime. We were in the same apartment, my apartment. I watched my past self pacing, face tense, eyes raw. You think I'm stupid, Lena? My voice snapped from the speakers. You think I wouldn't find out? She stood by the door, crying. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I saw the messages. Mark. The name hit me like an echo. Mark, the same one who kept calling her phone. She moved toward me in the video, hands raised, voice trembling. Please, listen. But I stepped back, fury carved into every motion. You were sleeping with my best friend. You lied to me. To him. She tried to grab my arm. I yanked it away. You're making it sound worse than. Worse than what? You were in my bed one night and his the next. How do you make that sound better? Her face collapsed into something between guilt and fear. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were always busy, and he was just there. In the video, I laughed bitterly. Right. He was there. That makes it fine. Then she said something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. You don't understand, I still love you, okay? I made a mistake. You can't leave me over one mistake. You already did, I said coldly. You left me the second you looked at him that way. I turned, grabbed my keys, and stormed out of frame. The video ended in silence, only the faint sound of her crying left behind. The timestamp was April 29, 2023. The night of my accident. I sat back in my chair, numb. Everything inside me caved inward. The crash. The hospital. The memory loss. It all started that night, after that fight. I didn't just lose control of a car. I lost myself. She wasn't comforting me out of love. She was hiding, burying the evidence before my memories could dig it up. I closed the laptop slowly, staring at the dim reflection of my face on the dark screen. She had been lying to me since the moment I opened my eyes. The next morning, I confronted her. She was pouring coffee, humming that same tune from the hospital, the one she said I used to love. The irony made me sick. Lena, I said quietly, how long were we together? She froze mid-pour. What? You said you were just a friend, but I found the flash drive. The mug clattered against the counter, spilling coffee down her wrist. She didn't even flinch. Her lips parted soundlessly, then pressed together as tears filled her eyes. You found it, she whispered. I didn't answer. She set the mug down, breathing fast. I wasn't ready for you to remember. Not yet. Remember what? I said. Did you lie? That you cheated on me? Her face crumpled. I didn't mean to. You don't understand, I thought you'd never wake up, and when you did, I thought if you remembered everything, you'd hate me forever. I already do, I said. That broke her. She stumbled forward, grabbing my hand, sobbing. Please, I didn't want to lose you again. I was trying to make things right. I thought if I could just start over, if we could start over, maybe this time I'd be better. Her words blurred through the sound of my own heartbeat. You pretended to be my friend, I said. You lied to me while I was too broken to know better. She shook her head desperately. No. I was trying to protect you. From what? From me, she said softly. And in that instant, I saw it, real remorse. Or maybe just fear that her carefully built illusion was cracking. Either way, it didn't matter. Something inside me hardened. I took a slow breath. Okay, I said quietly. Then let's start over. Her crying stopped. Confusion flickered through her features. You mean it? I smiled faintly. Yeah. Let's forget the past. All of it. She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my chest. I swear I'll make it up to you. I'll prove I've changed. I hugged her back. My face is calm. My heart is silent. But inside, something cold and sharp began to form. Not hatred. Not grief. Clarity. For days after, I played the part. The loving, forgiving boyfriend who wanted peace. I told her we should take things slow. She agreed, eyes shining with relief. At night, I lay beside her, listening to her breathing, studying the small lies she still carried, texts she hid, calls she took in whispers. I bought a small recorder. Slipped it under the couch cushion. One in the kitchen. Another near the bed. And I waited. The first few days, nothing. Just her routine check-ins, fake laughter, harmless calls. Until one night, she forgot to step outside. Her voice was low, urgent. He still doesn't know. No, I'm serious. He thinks I told him everything. A pause. Then, yes, Mark. I'll get the money soon. His insurance cleared. Just, be patient. My breath caught. Insurance. Money. I played the recording again, word for word. So that was her plan. She wasn't staying out of love. She was staying for the payout. I laughed under my breath. It sounded strange, dry, foreign. She thought I was her second chance. But she'd already written her own ending. I became meticulous. Controlled. She had no idea that while she was weaving her lies, I was unraveling them one by one. When she went grocery shopping, I checked her emails. When she showered, I read her messages. They were all there, weeks of communication with Mark. Plans to move. To take what was owed. Mark wrote things like, "He's clueless. You'll be free soon." Lena replied with hearts and promises. Each word sank deeper than the last, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just data now. Evidence. One night, she walked into the room, catching me staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked softly. I looked up, forcing a tired smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About us," I said. Her eyes softened. "You're remembering again, aren't you?" "Yes," I said, meeting her gaze. "Everything." And the best part was, she smiled. Because she thought that meant she'd won. Over the next week, I started to play my own role in her game. More affection. More trust. I told her she could handle my finances since she'd been so responsible. Her eyes lit up like it was Christmas. You really mean it? Of course, I said, steady and calm. You've done everything for me. Inside, I was counting down. Each gesture, each fake smile, each word of hers I recorded, another piece in the puzzle. But even as I planned, there were moments I almost faltered. Watching her hum in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring soup the way she used to. Hearing her laugh at a joke I'd told months ago. The way she looked at me like she still loved the version of me she destroyed. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. Then I'd hear her phone buzz. See Mark's name flash across the screen. And the pity would die where it stood. One evening, she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For giving me another chance. Her breath was warm against my neck. I kept my tone even. You deserve it. She smiled into my skin. You don't know how much that means. But I did. And soon, she'd know what mine meant too. When she went to bed that night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. The city lights bled through the blinds, slicing faint lines across the wall. Somewhere beneath my ribs, the last of my affection turned to ash. She thought she was rewriting our story, changing the past into something softer. But I wasn't her redemption. I was her reminder. And she'd learned soon enough that every lie she told me had been building to one truth. She wasn't the only one who could pretend. For a long time after I found the drive, I thought I'd feel lighter. Like ripping a bandage off. Instead, I felt colder. Not empty, just focused. As if all the noise of grief and confusion had been funneled into a single, precise instrument. I practiced being ordinary. That was the only time anybody stayed with me, I told her once, when she fussed over my laptop. I said it like the truth. Her face painted with relief. You were the only one there for me, I repeated one evening, as she brushed crumbs from my shirt. She smiled in that small, grateful way that had always made me nauseous. She said, "Good. I'm glad." She needed reassurance because that's the language people who keep secrets speak. Constant reaffirmation. So I fed her that language, soft and steady. More affection. More trust. More of the quiet praise she craved. I wanted her to believe she was winning. I wanted her to relax. To show her full hands. Behind the smiles, I built scaffolding. Therapy was part of it. I kept the appointments they suggested at the hospital. It was routine, breathing exercises, naming emotions, but it helped in a way the doctors probably didn't expect. Talking helped me pull threads. Not full clotheslines of memory, but scraps. Smells. A song lyric. A text I wrote to myself in a notebook on a day that now felt like another life. You're making progress, Dr. Ames said, watching me write in the small, yellow pad she'd given me. She had this habit of tilting her head like she was trying to understand a machine's code. Try to anchor your days. Keep a journal. Don't be afraid of the memories, they'll come on their own time. I did what she said. I wrote everything. Entries at first were clumsy: woke up, coffee, Lena humming. Then they sharpened. May 2nd, remembered proposal idea. Ring. Lake. One afternoon I found an old receipt tucked in the jacket I hadn't worn since I came back from the hospital. The date matched an entry, ring shop. My breath stalled. My fingers traced the edges as if the paper might speak. I sat with that receipt for an hour and let my imagination do the rest. I could see myself, weeks before the crash, carrying that tiny box in my pocket, rehearsing words that now felt like they belonged to a ghost. It unraveled me in a new way. Not just because Lena cheated, because I had planned a life for us. A life I had apparently entrusted to the person who'd betrayed me. Rage, at that point, was not a storm. It was a method. Quiet. Patient. Surgical. I started cleaning things that weren't on the surface. A password I'd never used, but should have. Old bank emails. Unfamiliar accounts that might hold traces of my life. It hurt, in a focused way, to see my life spread out like a ledger. But the ledger was a map, and maps are useful. Then the insurance payout came. They called on a gray Wednesday, formal words, numbers. Someone kind on the phone asked if I'd like to speak to a financial advisor. Lena squeezed my hand too tight when I told her. "We'll figure it out," she said, like it was the simplest plan. She sounded relieved in the way she always had when a problem could be solved with other people's money. I moved the funds to a new account. Not because I was trying to hide them from anyone, I was trying to put them somewhere safe. I set up an account with a name that required more documentation than I could have imagined. I tossed in paperwork, sat for hours at the bank, and learned to say things with my voice even while my hands were steady on the counter. When I told Lena about it later, I made it sound random. "I wanted everything in one place," I said. "Just so it's organized." 4 bills. 4, I let the sentence hang. "For us?" she prompted, eyes hopeful. "For us," I said. Then I told her something I knew would please her. I told her I wanted her to have access. "You've been taking care of everything," I said, finger tracing the seam of the living room cushion. "You should have access to this account. You're the only one I trust." Her reaction was immediate and raw. She wrapped her hands around my face like I might dissolve and sobbed, "You mean it?" Then she laughed, delighted. "I can't believe it." She called Mark that night and said, "It's finally happening." I kept the recording. The trap was easy because she had already taught me how to bait her. She wanted freedom. She wanted money. She wanted to be done with the life that included me. She thought I was too broken to stand in the way. I bought cheap things I didn't need. 2 recorders. One tucked into the cushion of the old couch where she loved to nap. One hidden behind the plant on the balcony, where she sometimes smoked when she thought I was asleep. I learned the safe corners of our apartment, the blind spots of her purse, the places she left things when she was tired. Recording people is intimate. It feels like peering into a room you weren't invited into. But there was so much to hear. Late whispers. The way Mark's voice softened when he said, "He's not going to know for a while." The casual cruelty of his laughter. "Insurance pays out first, then we move. We split it. Easy." She said into the phone, "We'll be out in a few months. I'll tell him eventually." When she said his name, there was the same petulant affection she'd used with me when she wanted something. She thought she was negotiating a future. She had no idea I already collected every word. The near discovery happened after that. I'd been sloppy, complacent, just once. The recorder under the couch popped when she shifted her weight, it made a tiny clink against the wooden floor. Her head snapped up. Her eyes searched the room like a bird detecting a nearby owl. "You okay?" I asked easily. She smiled too brightly. "Yeah. I heard something." Her hand slipped toward the cushion. For a second, time stopped. Her fingers grazed the fabric, close enough to feel the heat from the recorder's case underneath. I had to think fast. I laughed, absurdly, and reached over with my own hand, patting the couch. "Maybe it's just the spring," I said. "You know this place is old." She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. She pulled her hand back like it had burned her. "Right. Old furniture." She kept a distance after that, curling her legs to the side as if to avoid the area. That tiny misstep reminded me of how close it had all been to unraveling. I taped the device tighter, moved another to the kitchen vent, then told myself not to be careless again. The moral questions surfaced in late hours when the apartment was quiet. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a mug of tea gone cold and think, am I becoming worse than her? Was I crossing some line that would make me indistinguishable from the person I wanted to punish? The doubt was loud and ugly. It tasted like bile. For a few nights, I entertained the possibility of giving up. Just walking away and letting her have whatever she wanted. It would be cheaper emotionally, and quieter. It would spare me the slow burn of revenge. But every time I considered it, I remembered the way she had looked when the video ended, the face that crumpled into tears like she was a child who'd been caught. I remembered Mark's laughter at the idea of us being clueless. I remembered the receipt for the ring, the plans I'd never got to voice. The small, private cruelty of being used. One night, staring at the ceiling, I said out loud to no one, "No, I'm just remembering who I really am." The sentence felt like a verdict I cut for myself. It was not an excuse. It was a definition. I wasn't playing a role so I could hurt someone. I was reclaiming a narrative that had been stolen. The plan became a ritual. I shuffled bank accounts, not to hide money but so that there were records to show I'd been prudent. I moved copies of certain recordings to cloud storage with time-stamped backups. I sent anonymous snippets to a friend I trusted, Evan, someone who'd once looked at Lena and frowned. I wanted witnesses who would not be swayed by the sob story she'd undoubtedly weave later. I started rehearsing a confrontation in my head like one practices a speech. Not just words but timing. The best revenge in my mind was not violence. It was exposure. A slow, irreparable unwinding of her lies into public light. I wanted her to watch the foundations of her life collapse in the same way she'd watched my reality crumble. Dinner, I decided, would be the stage. It would be intimate enough to force truth, but public enough to ensure consequences. I planned to invite Mark, make sure he knew he was part of the evening, coaxed into a corner by his own bravado. I wanted to show pictures. Play the video. Let the recording speak. I wanted her to hear herself saying the things she'd hidden. I wanted his wife, if he had one, to hear. I wanted the insurance investigator to get a copy. I wanted the dominoes to fall. I told Lena I wanted a quiet dinner to celebrate moving forward. I said it with a smile. She cried when I said it. "Thank you," she whispered. She planted a kiss against my cheek that felt like a soft accusation. I let it rest there while I mapped the route in my head, where the recorder would be, when the lights would dim, what the look on Mark's face would be when the first video played. There were small logistical bumps. Dates to coordinate. Old wounds to reopen carefully so she'd talk. A near discovery shook me briefly, but it reminded me to be careful. I tightened my narrative, rehearsed my expressions, practiced forgiveness like a costume I could slip on at the table. People believe forgiving faces. And beneath the surface, where breath meets bone, the cold clarity only deepened. It felt less like revenge and more like a tidy restoration of balance. I would not be the person destroyed in the crash. I would be the one who remembered. Dinner would be where the memory finally sat at the table with us and refused to leave. The table looked like a photograph in a life she wanted to keep, white linen, 2 flickering candles, a single red rose bowed between our plates. Soft music spilled from the speaker, an old song that had nothing to do with either of us, which made it safer. The apartment felt staged and intimate all at once, like a confession booth set to dim lighting. Lena arrived late, cheeks flushed, hair pulled into a careless knot. She wore the dress she thought I liked, simple, honest, forgiving. Mark was already there when I opened the door. He pretended surprise, then slid into his seat with the nervous composure of someone who thinks he can charm his way out of anything. "You look great," Lena said, and her smile trembled the way a mask does when it's too hot. I poured wine for everyone. I kept my movements slow, precise. I wanted every second to feel ordinary until it wasn't. We made small talk. Weather. A joke about the downstairs neighbor. Lena's laughter came too easily. Mark's eyes kept flicking to me, then away. He was careful. He was bored. He clearly thought this was a formality. When the plates were cleared and the wine was gone, I sat back. The candlelight threw shadows across Lena's face. I could see the small lines at the corners of her eyes. I could see fear beginning like a bruise. "I've been remembering things," I said. Her hand stopped mid-air, fork frozen. The room contracted. Mark smiled a little, like he was watching a show he'd already heard was good. "You're joking," Lena said, voice thin. "I'm not," I said. "Pieces. Flashes. A receipt. A ring box. A fight. The exact words we used when we split." I let the sentences fall one by one. No heat. No pleading. Just a fact. She swallowed. "You said the doctors." "I know what they said." I tapped the table. The sound was sharp. "But I don't need a doctor to remember voices." She laughed, a single brittle sound. "What are you trying to do?" "Nothing dramatic." I folded my hands. "I just want to tell you what I've been remembering. So we can be honest." I looked at Mark and then at her, letting the weight of the moment sit heavily on them. I began to describe the lies. Not in accusation, but as a recital of small betrayals that added up to a life. The dinner dates she'd erased from calendars. The secret texts. The night at the bar when her lipstick smelled like someone else's cologne. The photo frames she'd moved. The way she called herself my friend when the tape said otherwise. She tried to interrupt once. I didn't let her. "You said you were my friend," I said softly. "You signed papers that made you make decisions for me when I couldn't. You told people I'd deleted photos. You told everyone I wanted a fresh start." My voice was calm. The calm of someone who had practiced being calm in the mirror. Her hands were clasped so hard her knuckles showed white. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't. You told Mark I'd never." My throat closed for a second. I breathed. "You told him I was too dumb to remember." Silence pressed in. The music played like a held breath. I reached under the table and pressed a small button on my phone. From the living room speakers, a recorded voice unfurled, her voice, light and amused, and then Mark's, low and cruel. "Dude, he's not going to remember. He's out for the count." Mark laughed on the playback. "We get the payout, we split. Easy." Lena's face turned the color of paper. Her hand flew to her mouth. Wine trembled and sloshed, a dark comet across the linen. I clicked other files. Videos played in the background, her whispering into the phone, "He trusts me. He won't suspect a thing." Her laugh threaded through a clip where they mocked me, calling me kind names and feeling safe in their cruelty. Mark's jaw dropped. He stuttered, That's not. You sent this to Mark's wife," I said. "And to your boss. And to the police. The insurance investigator has copies." I watched him go pale in real time. He had the same expression I'd seen in the video when I stormed out, stunned, betrayed by his own audacity. Lena started to move, to babble, to reach for me. "Please, please," her voice broke against the walls. Tears came quick and hot, but they looked rehearsed, practiced by someone who knew how to play the tragic heroine. "Funny," I said. My voice was small and very steady. "You wanted to erase my memory. Now I'm erasing yours." She screamed then. A small, animal sound. Not the composed sob she'd shown me at the kitchen sink. This was raw. It made the windows vibrate in their frames. "Think about the emails you sent," I told her. "Think about the text messages where you were planning to split the money. Think about the photos you deleted. Think about every conversation you had when you thought I was asleep." I watched the ground open beneath her face. She collapsed into a chair, shaking. "I didn't mean it." She mouthed the words like prayer. Mark stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "You'll go to prison," he said, sounding like he was speaking of a distant movie plot. This was insurance fraud. It's not decided yet," I said. "But the investigator called me tonight to ask questions he wouldn't have if I hadn't sent him a copy of the videos." I looked at Mark specifically, letting the implication hang. "You told him. You told him it was staged." Mark's shoulders curled inward. He stared at Lena like she'd been a stranger. "What did you do?" he whispered. "I did what you taught me to do," I said. I remembered. She crawled toward me across the linen, hands open. "Please," she begged. "Please don't." I let her words fall. I could have said anything then. I could have smashed the candle or thrown the wineglass at the mirror. I could have screamed. I could have chosen cruelty. But I wanted a clean finish. "You could have told me," I said. "You could have been honest." My eyes held hers until she flinched. "Instead you gambled on the fact that I'd be the one who lost everything." She sobbed, big and loud now, a sound that filled the rooms she had built out of silence. I rose. The candles cast long shadows across the table. Mark sat frozen, the color gone from his cheeks. He reached into his pocket like he would find the courage there to fix it. He didn't. I walked to the door, my coat already on my shoulders. Lena clung to my sleeve as if that could anchor her to what remained. "Please," she whispered behind my back. "Please don't send them, please." I didn't turn. I opened the door and let the city air hit my face. It felt like a baptism. "Funny," I repeated, softer this time. "You wanted to erase my memory. Now I'm erasing yours." Outside, the world carried on, cars, distant music, someone yelling down the block. I walked away from the lighted window where she knelt. I didn't look back. I slept that night with a phone full of confirmations. Messages pinged, an automated reply from HR, a red receipt from an unknown number labeled Mark's wife, then a terse email from an investigator asking for a time to meet. In the days that followed, everything I'd planned unfolded. Mark's arrest made the local news. Lena's boss called and asked for an explanation she couldn't give without admitting everything. Friends who'd stayed silent wandered away as the videos circulated. The apartment sat heavy with absence. People asked me later if I felt satisfied. I don't like that word. It implies a warmth I never felt. What I felt was precise. Clean. Like a table scrubbed until the stain came out. Like stacking up the pieces and putting them in order. Like the pages of my life smoothed flat and set into a drawer. On the porch that first evening after it all, I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, and watched Lena through the glass. She sat on the floor among scattered papers, the same dress stained with wine. Her face was small and slack. She looked older than the woman who'd run her fingers through my hair in the hospital. She looked exposed. A neighbor across the hall watched from the window with curiosity. A siren passed far away, then faded. I put out the cigarette and walked back inside to a home that felt less like a trap and more like a room finally cleared. My hands were steady. She looked up when I came in. "Please," she said again. I sat at the table and folded my hands. The candles were long since snuffed. "No," I said. "You had your chance to tell me the truth." I left the light on in the hallway and walked to the bedroom. My voice was quiet in the dark. "Revenge doesn't have to be loud," I said to myself. "It just has to be true." Outside, somewhere, Mark was being led in handcuffs. Inside, Lena's phone buzzed with texts she couldn't answer. My life had been rearranged like the pages of a book. I lay down and let the silence settle. My head ached for a moment, sharp pain behind one eye. I touched it and remembered the sentence I'd said earlier, the one that had broken the glass. "You know, Lena," I thought. "You were the reason my head hurt every night." I slept then, on my back, feeling the kind of peace that isn't joy, but is something like resolution. It's been 6 months. The world looks different now, not new, just sharper, like someone cleaned the glass between me and everything else. Sometimes, when I walk through the city, I catch myself tracing paths I didn't mean to take. The park bench where we used to sit. The cafe with the cracked window that still leaks the smell of burnt espresso. The corner where the accident happened. I go there often. I don't know why. Maybe because memory likes loops. The traffic light still blinks the same pale green. The guardrail has been replaced, the old metal folded into nothing. But the sound, tires against wet asphalt, still drags me backward. That night used to feel like an ending. Now it feels like a line drawn between two versions of myself, one who loved blindly, and one who learned to see. I saw her yesterday. Not by accident. I knew where she'd be. She walks to the bus stop near the river every evening now. Her job's gone, her friends too. She lives in a rented room above a laundromat, where the walls are stained with heat and soap. She wears the same beige coat she wore the night of my accident, creases deeper now, frayed at the cuffs. It hangs off her like it doesn't remember her shape anymore. She stands by the curb with her head down, watching cars pass like she's waiting for a moment that never comes. For a long time, I thought I'd feel something seeing her again, anger, pity, satisfaction. But there was nothing. Just quiet. She doesn't see me. I stay across the street, behind the tinted window of a parked car. The city moves around her, but she stands still, a ghost trapped in her own routine. Once, she looks up, eyes searching the crowd. And for half a second, I think she senses it, the weight of being watched by the person who remembers everything she tried to erase. Her gaze crosses the street, drifts past me, then lowers again. She boards the bus and disappears into its reflection. The engine hum fades. The street returns to ordinary noise. I sit there until the light changes. Then I start the car. The sky is pale, washed of color. The kind of evening that makes everything look like a memory. People like to say time heals. That forgetting is mercy. But they never tell you what happens when forgetting isn't an option, when the scars are written too deep to fade, when every heartbeat sounds like a reminder. She taught me that. She taught me that memories fade. But revenge remembers everything.